Hello, everybody. Welcome to another special edition of Swan Breaking News. I'm Nico Moran. I'm the Director of Content Strategy at Swan and the host of Simply Bitcoin. Absolutely massive news today. The New York Attorney General sued Gemini, Genesis, and DCG for defrauding investors. We have a great panel today of fellow Bitcoiners and legal experts to talk about what the ramifications and what is going to result from all this. This is something that Bitcoiners have been, calling for quite a bit. So I'm going to bring up our guest first. We have Terrence Yang. Terrence Yang is the managing director of Swan Private. He graduated from Harvard Law and practiced law on Wall Street for large firms. Terrence, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
And of course, Hunter, who works with me over at the media. He's the head writer of Swan Media and one of the stars behind our latest Swan originals that we have been dropping on the Swan channel. If you guys haven't checked out the Swan originals, they're absolutely incredible. I highly, highly recommend it. To kind of set the tone for this conversation, I do want to actually read the press release that came out of the New York Attorney General's office and what the implications are, or what they allege that Gemini, Genesis, DCG did. So it goes on to say, New York Attorney General Lolita James today filed a sweeping lawsuit against cryptocurrency companies Gemini, Genesis, and its affiliates, Genesis and its digital currency group, for defrauding more than 230,000 investors, including at least 29,000 New Yorkers, of more than $1 billion. An investigation by the Office of Attorney General found that Gemini lied to investors about an investment program it ran with Genesis called Gemini Earn. Gemini repeatedly assured investors that investing with Genesis through Gemini Earn program was a low-risk investment. However, the Office of Attorney General investigation found that Gemini's internal analysis of Genesis showed that the company's financials were risky. The lawsuit alleges that Gemini knew Genesis loans were unsecured and at one point highly concentrated with one entity, Sam Bankman-Fried's Alameda, but did not reveal this information to investors. Quote, these cryptocurrency companies lied to investors and tried to hide more than $1 billion in losses, and it was middle class investors who suffered as a result, said Attorney General James. Quote, hardworking New Yorkers and investors around the country lost more than $1 billion because they were fed blatant lies that their money would be safe and grow if they invest in Gemini Earn. Instead, Gemini hid the risk of investing with Genesis, and Genesis lied to the public about its losses. This fraud is yet another example of bad actors causing harm throughout the under-regulated cryptocurrency industry. My office will continue our efforts to stop deceptive cryptocurrency companies and push for stronger regulations to protect all investors. Gemini, Genesis, and DCG's fraud led to roughly $1 billion in losses for more than 230,000 investors, including at least 29,000 New Yorkers. One of the New Yorkers investors harmed by Gemini Earn was a retired 73-year-old grandmother who invested her and her husband's life savings of over almost $200,000 in Gemini Earn because they believed Gemini's marketing statements that it was safe and secure choice. The investor has hoped to use this money to pay for her grandchild's education, but lost it all because of the fraud. Another Gemini Earn investor, a 56-year-old New Yorker, invested in and lost approximately $20,000 in Gemini Earn, virtually all his savings. He chose Gemini Earn because he researched the product and came to believe, based on Gemini's statements, that Gemini Earn was more secure than other interest-bearing cryptocurrency investments. It goes on to describe what Gemini is. It says Gemini is a New York-based digital asset platform that allows investors to buy and sell cryptocurrencies. In February 2021, Gemini launched an investing program with Genesis called Gemini Earn, in which Genesis generated profits for investors by lending assets to third parties and returning a portion of those profits to investors. When launching Gemini Earn, Gemini told investors that it had vetted Genesis through a risk management framework and that it was a trusted company. However, the Office of Attorney General found that Gemini's internal risk analysis of Genesis showed that the loans to the company were risky. The lawsuit alleges that from the start of the Gemini Earn program in February 2021 through February 2022, Gemini's internal risk analysis showed that Genesis's loan book was risky and highly concentrated in a small number of counterparties. At one point, Sam Bankman-Fried's Almeida was the borrower for nearly 60% of all outstanding loans from Genesis to third parties. Only a year into the program, in February 2022, Gemini revised its estimate of Genesis credit rating from BBB to CCC, junk grade, but did not publicly reveal to investors that it downgraded its rating and continued to market Earn as low risk. The Office of Attorney General investigation also found that in July 2022, Gemini's board of managers discussed ending the Gemini Earn program because of the risks associated with Genesis, and one board member even compared Genesis' financial condition to that of Lehman Brothers before its collapse. In addition, in the summer of 2022, Gemini Risk personnel withdrew their own investments from Earn. Gemini nevertheless failed to provide its investors with any meaningful warning about these risks. I mean, these are pretty serious allegations, Terrence. But as a Bitcoiner, it does not come at a surprise to me personally whatsoever. What's your take?
Totally agree. We've been telling, as Bitcoiners, we've been telling folks, not your keys, not your coins. You have to treat Bitcoin, which is the only valuable crypto, as a bearer asset, and that means taking self-custody. Um, when you try to do things like lend out your crypto, whether it's Bitcoin or Ethereum or whatever, to another program to earn some yield, and I believe Gemini was offering only like 3.5%. So it felt safe. It looked safe to a lot of people. I think they had Gemini custody and whatever involved. It means that you as a investor, you're kind of chasing yield and not looking at Bitcoin correctly. Your first mistake is doing altcoins. Your second mistake is not taking custody. And that combination is lethal, especially when you lend it out. And the way that they make money, the way that you get yield is you are the yield, meaning there is extreme risk of you not getting your money back, which is what's been happening again and again. BlockFi, Celsius, and now Genesis Gemini Earn.
Yeah. And what's your take on the allegations made by the New York Attorney General's office where they claim that Genesis and DCG tried to conceal more than $1.1 billion in losses from its investors?
Uh, it's These press releases are generally very well written, and this is no exception. So it feels true to me. All that matters in the court of law, not the court of public opinion, is what the New York Attorney General can prove. But it does seem like they had insiders leaking stuff all over the place to the New York Attorney General or to some intermediary that ended up passing it on to the NYAG. Why? Because they talk about things like, how they compared it to Lehman Brothers, compared this program, thought about shutting it down. Insiders at Gemini got out and did not tell their customers, which is totally the opposite of what you should be doing. As even if you're not a legal fiduciary, when you're dealing with people's money, the reason why you have all these laws around securities and so forth is to protect the American public from Wall Street and financial company shenanigans. And it looks like Gemini and Genesis are proving that crypto is way underregulated compared to Wall Street.
So, do you think, that being said, do you think that this will delay or even stop the approval of the spot Bitcoin ETF?
Absolutely. I don't see the SEC approving a Grayscale, which is a digital currency group subsidiary, a Grayscale ETF conversion from GBTC to a spot Bitcoin ETF, when the New York Attorney General just came out 6 7 hours ago with this massive allegation and charge. It really is a sweeping lawsuit, like they said in the first line of their press release and the text.
So
So
Hunter, go ahead, Terrence.
because they mentioned Digital Currency Group, just to tie things together, which owns both Grayscale and Genesis, and there's been allegations elsewhere of interdealing, sort of sibling company to sibling company dealing between Genesis and Grayscale that were not arm's length, not on market, where they used Grayscale allegedly as a bit of a piggy bank for Genesis because Genesis was short on cash.
Gotcha. So before we went on air, Hunter, you had an amazing question in regards to the Grayscale, because we know that Grayscale is trying to convert their GBTC into an ETF.
Right. So I actually have another wrinkle to the question now, and I want to get Terrence's take on this too.
Sure.
The first is, so it seems obvious to me, and I'm not a lawyer, that this throws a wrench into Grayscale's plans to convert, that they've been talking about, to a spot ETF for a long time. But does this have broader implications for all of the other people who have applied, like the Fidelities and the BlackRocks? And could there be a delay there? Secondly,
Great question.
if there is no conversion, and that's totally off the table, which seems reasonable, what about in the event that the Attorney General's office wins this lawsuit? Are we then looking at like a liquidation of Grayscale? And if so, would shareholders be given a distribution in US dollars or the underlying asset, Bitcoin, or how do you see that playing out?
Yeah. Okay. Great question. So first, I don't think this affects BlackRock, Fidelity, Invesco, or Franklin Templeton. In particular, why those four? Each of those manages over $1 trillion in assets today. The others that applied, Valkyrie, Van Eck, ARC, Kathy Woods, and others, they manage about 20 billion or less. It's much smaller, maybe 40 billion. So you have the big four Bitcoin ETFs. I think two of those have a great shot at getting approved very soon, specifically Fidelity and BlackRock. Why? Fidelity applied early. They seem to understand Bitcoin. They have a lot of Bitcoin expertise. BlackRock, just because, well, they're BlackRock, and Larry Fink has been very smart in promoting crypto because he can't talk about Bitcoin. And unlike Kathy Wood, he doesn't talk about Bitcoin specifically when he's interviewed. Why? Because he's smart and doesn't want to piss off regulators because he has a Bitcoin ETF before regulators. So he just talks about crypto generally, but we know he's talking about Bitcoin. So I think those two may get approved together, possibly with some others, just to make it look like the SEC is not favoring, the big four. But I really think that this hurts Grayscale in particular. It can impact Binance, Justin Sun, and OKCoin and others because of all the interdealing and scams and illegal activity that have been happening between these big players, whether it's Genesis, Digital Currency Group, Binance, FTX, and so forth. So I think those get hurt. Separately, you asked a question about Grayscale conversion, what happens there. I think the SEC pushes for a replacement to Grayscale. I can think of a lot of companies, including the ones I just mentioned, who would be very interested and make a great offer, a compelling offer, I would say, to replace Grayscale, take over GBTC, and do the conversion sort of that way. Something like that. The order might not be correct, but maybe it's as a condition to the Grayscale conversion to a spot Bitcoin ETF. Grayscale and Digital Currency Group are completely out of it. I don't see how they continue with their application successfully given today's filings.
And before we continue the conversation, I want to welcome up on stage. We have the host of Cafe Bitcoin, the host of the Bitcoin Veterans podcast, and also a managing director at Swan Private. We have Alex Stnic. Alex, thank you so much for joining the show today.
Morning, guys. Thanks for having me.
So, Alex, what we were discussing is what the implications are of the recent lawsuit that was filed by the New York Attorney General office, and how that would potentially affect Grayscale's ability to convert GBTC into a spot Bitcoin ETF. What Terrence was saying is that that would basically stop it in its tracks. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think there's definitely some reasons to be concerned here. Like if the what they're alleging is correct, then it means that these guys from the various different companies had knowledge of what was going on, and if that's true, that's not great news for GBDC. Um, and unfortunately, because I think a lot of people who I know, I know personally, there are many investors who bought GBDC and uh, have told me that as soon as that discount window closes, that they're going to probably move out of it. So they've been waiting for that moment. The discount window has been closing, I think, in anticipation of a positive decision regarding their ETF. And if in fact this situation either delays that further or causes the ETF to not be approved, um, that's an important time that we're in right now for these folks. They have to make some decisions.
100%. And back to you, Terrence. So, what are the implications for the rest of the cryptocurrency industry? And let me define what I mean by that: the non-Bitcoin, cryptocurrency industry as a whole, if the New York Attorney General's office wins this case.
Sure. Yeah, I want to go back to what Alex said. The only thing I'd add to that is I disagree that the implication that it matters if the New York Attorney General can prove it. I think just the current filings, today's press release, will stop the SEC in its tracks from approving the Grayscale ETF, which is kind of due, I believe, this Friday. So that's number one. I think the SEC is just going to wait. They have a great excuse to wait, delay, or reject, right? Or just say, you know what, we'll approve if Grayscale and DCG is replaced because these allegations are ridiculous. We look ridiculous if we approve the Grayscale ETF right now when you're owned by DCG and DCG Digital Currency Group is named in this lawsuit by the SEC, by the New York AG. So that's one. Um, Going back to your question about the implications for crypto generally, I believe that was your question.
Yes, for the cryptocurrency industry. So there's the Bitcoin only companies, right? Because there's a lot of commingling in the eyes of the public, I would say, in the eyes of regulators. But there's the Bitcoin only industry in my eyes, and then there's the Bitcoin and altcoin industry. So what are the implications for the cryptocurrency industry, like I just defined, if the New York Attorney General's office wins this case?
So we see ETH going down today and Bitcoin is up over 1%. So I think the market is telling us what we Bitcoiners knew all along, which is there's Bitcoin and there's shitcoins. And crypto that is not Bitcoin are all shitcoins. It's a casino. They're digital penny stocks that people trade for fun and to get rich quick. They think they have an advantage. They get duped and scammed by these pump and dump artists, whether they're crypto casinos or um, coin promoters or VCs or whatever, kind of orange washing their reputation, saying that they like Bitcoin. I like Bitcoin, buy my shitcoin, and it doesn't work. You can't make money off of it. You're doing it in an illegal way or unlawful way, and it will be shut down or cleaned up so that you will be cut down to size. I think this is the beginning of the end for crypto casinos for some time. Obviously, when Bitcoin pumps, there's a lot of fake Bitcoins that come around every time, whatever DeFi, DGen, blockchain projects get promoted. But the only thing that's valuable, if you think about it, is Bitcoin. Why? Because it's finite, it's hard to take away, it's hard to stop when you try to move it. Everything else is centralized. Everything else is an IOU. and varying degrees of IOUs, and everything else in crypto is basically a pump and dump.
So you kind of buried the lead there, and I want to double
Sure.
back onto it. And Hunter and Alex, please please feel free to jump in. So you said that this is the beginning of the end for crypto casinos in the U.S. Coinbase is a massive company. Binance US. Not to mention the countless others. Kraken, I might add, right? Gemini as well. So what do you mean by that statement? Are you saying that they're, if go ahead?
Yeah. So like meaning like I would think of Coinbase as the same way I think of IBM. They can linger, right? They're a good marketing company. I'm still waiting for my tomatoes on the IBM blockchain from the Super Bowl ad years ago. But I see Coinbase dying a slow death. They can stick around for decades, but they're just not going to really matter. Just like no one talks about multi-level marketing companies that are actually legal, like Herbalife in the US, right? They're around. They just don't matter. Their market cap is whatever it is, 10 billion or something, very small compared to companies like Apple that are 2 trillion, and Bitcoin, which is going to far exceed Apple's market cap if we're right, which we are. Long term might take 10 years or more, but yeah, Bitcoin can easily replace gold. Alex was a fantastic gold salesman back in the day, and he talks about this all the time on Cafe Bitcoin. But yeah, there's going to be just a great curtailment, I feel, with crypto in the US being curtailed because of all the fraud and abuse to US retail in particular.
Alex, what's your
Can I?
take on?
Oh,
Go ahead,
sorry.
Hunter.
I just want to jump in and piggyback on what Terrence was saying with the non-legal opinion. For me, reading the most salient sentence of that whole lawsuit that you read at the top of this thing, Nico, was these cryptocurrency companies lied to investors. That's it right there. That's what you're seeing over and over and over again. And notice it's not these Bitcoin companies lied to investors. It's these crypto companies lied to investors. And what people have to ask themselves is, where does the yield come from? And I think Terrence's point earlier was that, maybe Gemini Earn seemed a little bit safer because their yield wasn't 20% or even 8%. It was more of a sort of back down to earth 3% or something along those lines. But as a person who is invested and interested in Bitcoin, those are huge red flags. Where does the yield come from? And time and again, we've seen all of these crypto casinos fail, come under legal action because, in my estimation, as I follow these stories, it's the same thing over and over again. And that is, again, quoting from the lawsuit. I think this is quoting from Letitia James. These cryptocurrency companies lied to investors. So for me, that's what it all comes down to.
Yeah.
100%. Alex, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, there's a lot of Bitcoiners who use the word shitcoin when they're referring to basically anything besides Bitcoin. And there's a lot of people who are like, well, why are you guys like that? Why do you say things like that? I mean, isn't that a little aggressive? However, if you look at it, almost every single one of these things, Terrence, what do you think the numbers are? Something like 95% of these things have turned out to basically be pump and dumps. There are very few actual legitimate technology products that have any kind of value whatsoever. And I don't feel like any of them do, because they're all essentially trying to mimic the idea of a decentralized accounting system that Bitcoin has, a decentralized system of verification, a decentralized system of issuance. They have various spins on this, and none of them come even close to Bitcoin. I was listening to Saylor the other day talk about the computing power of the Bitcoin network, and made an analogy. And the analogy was, if you had this gigantic mountain, which is the proof of work hash power of all the computing power in the Bitcoin network, and compared it to the closest proof of stake protocol, it would be like comparing a mountain to a grain of rice. They're not even remotely in the same universe of relevance. Yet, they're out here scamming people out of billions and billions of dollars. This particular case is saying, what is it, 230,000 customers and $1.1 billion in losses. And The crazy part is what they're alleging they knew about it. They're saying that Gemini knew that Genesis's loans were undersecured and at one point highly concentrated with one entity, Alameda, which is Sam Bankman-Fried, FTX. Oh my gosh, another shitcoin casino. Who could have imagined that that would happen?
So let me ask you something, Terrence, because with a lot of these breaking news stories, right? You know, it happens that day, it gets a lot of buzz, but from, you know, being in the industry, I think it's my 7th year now. Lawsuits take a very long time. So in your experience, you know, how long do you think this type of lawsuit is going to play out? How long is it going to take to play out?
So that's a great question. I think it depends on the judge. We need to see who the judge is and research that. Litigators who have experience with this would know better than me. But as we can see in the SBF trial, judges can move very fast and cut people off. In contrast, if you get a judge like what you had in the O.J. Simpson case back in the day, that took forever because that judge didn't want to be overruled on appeal. So he let both sides, right, take their time and object to everything and many sidebars and just delay and extend the trial. So it really depends on the judge, number one. But typically, I would guess within about 12 months, you should start seeing this either settled or kind of that both sides should have finished their their the trial process, and then it would be up to the jury to deliberate.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
And
that's my guess.
if they are successful, what legal precedent does this set for the entire industry?
Yeah, so technically, the legal precedent is only for New York state courts and New York state law, but it could practically, I could see. So basically, the way you should look at attorney generals, whether they're in New York or any of the other 50 states, is each one of them, to the extent they're born in the United States, they want to become president at some point. You should always think that with any high ranking politician, that's the game they're playing. So if you're a California attorney general or Illinois attorney general where they overregulate, you can expect that they will do a copycat type of lawsuit to protect their investors and their customers, right, and their residents. So that could be one effect. And then another effect would be have a chilling effect to, as the crypto bros would put it, curb innovation and job creation. But in my opinion, it's just curbing illegal activity and Ponzi's. So you look at something like gambling, right? And this is just digital penny stocks. Who are we kidding when you're speculating on these assets, these non crypto assets on Gemini or wherever? Gambling's highly regulated. You got to go to Vegas to do it. You got to go to Indian casino or whatever. You can't just do it anywhere. And right now, U.S. residents can sign up from anywhere online and trade these digital penny stocks anywhere. It's totally underregulated, even compared to actual penny stocks that the Wolf of Wall Street guys were responsible for pumping and dumping on many Americans.
Gotcha. So they did allege fraud. Is this a civil case or a criminal case?
Yeah, I need to look at this, but basically the lawsuit is, yeah, that's a good question. I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite sure. They don't really talk about it, so it makes me think it's civil because they don't mention
Gotcha.
criminal. If it was criminal, like if I were the New York AG and I'm gunning for president someday, then it would be, yeah, I would say criminal, right? So I think it's civil, but
Gotcha.
it kind of doesn't matter
Got-
in terms of the shorter term impact on the Grayscale GBTC that a lot of people were looking forward to approval of, because Grayscale did win their lawsuit against the SEC on appeal with 3 excellent judges in the DC Circuit Court of Appeals. So this is tough.
Quick question.
Gotcha.
I'm just curious if anybody, Terrence or Alex or Nico, you guys think that this will have an effect on the closing of the discount that Grayscale is trading at with respect to the underlying net asset value.
Alex, you want to hit that?
I'm sorry, I completely missed it. Say it again.
I was just wondering if this has any implications on what we started seeing was the closing of the discount of the trading value of the shares of Grayscale Bitcoin Trust to the underlying net asset value of the Bitcoin that they hold. And do we think that this might have implications on the closing of that window? Would it accelerate it? Would it stop it? Would it reverse it? And we'd see that gap widening again? I'm just curious on your opinions.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether it's whether it would continue to tighten or not. I suspect it's tightening in anticipation of them launching an ETF. So if that is the case, then it's logical to me that there would be less demand for the shares, and if there's less demand for the shares, maybe this is as good as it gets. This is not financial advice. This thing is a security, so all I'm going to say is if it were me, I'd sell those things.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you,
So I have a quick comment, just two facts. Grayscale Bitcoin Trust is up today, despite the news, 0.71%, 0.71%. However, that greatly lags Bitcoin, which is up 1.28%. So the NAV discount is already widening again. And I expect it to continue to widen as the market digests this news. Why is Bitcoin up at all? I think it's because we are in the beginning of a bull market, potentially for Bitcoin. That's why, despite the bad news, Bitcoin's up and people are rushing to safety, flight to quality. As Larry Fink said, he's actually right on this, and he's very good at marketing, right? He's very good at marketing and advancing BlackRock's interests. It just so happens that BlackRock's interest, because they have this spot Bitcoin ETF, which will be huge if it launches, if and when it launches, and I think it will, that BlackRock's interests are currently aligned with Bitcoin and should be for some years to come.
So do you agree with that, Alex? What's your take? Do you believe that this is the beginning of the Bitcoin bull market or the next cycle?
I don't know. I think it's early to say. We're still bouncing here in a range. I mean, it's great. It's up on the day 1.22%. But I think what's more interesting is that if we've got other assets that are selling off and Bitcoin's going up, that's interesting. Like Bitcoiners have talked about this for a really long time. Like at some point, it would be a flight to quality. At some point, investors would be like, okay, well, all this other kind of stuff, not looking so hot. Why is Bitcoin still going up? Maybe I should get some, which is a self-reinforcing effect, if that makes any sense. And that's, I think, what we're starting to see. Not only are we starting to see this, but when this kicks in earnest, when there is a serious decoupling, man, that's going to be wild.
Yeah, my main point is the reason. So what happens in a bull market? Bad news doesn't affect the price going up. Bitcoin is up. Coinbase is down 0.92%. Were they named in the lawsuit? No. Do they have anything to do with Gemini, Earn, Genesis, DCG? Not really. Why are they down? That's now down 1%. If Bitcoin is up on bad news, and this is horrible news for the Grayscale Bitcoin ETF and maybe for crypto generally, you would expect it to affect Bitcoin. But the fact that Bitcoin is up, Ethereum and Coinbase are down, GBTC is greatly lagging Bitcoin today by 40% or something. That's a bull indicator, possibly, very possibly the beginning of a bull market, because I would have expected Bitcoin price to be way down on this news, not up over 1%.
Yeah, I actually tweeted something to kind of similar to what you're saying. I said, Gemini gets sued, Bitcoin is up, nature's healing, and I kind of made a joke out of it. But I'm just this is the first time I'm hearing that Coinbase is down too, and I think that's the market trying to say something, right? Anyways, Hunter, I want to get your take on the discussion.
But yeah, I think what the market is trying to say is that the fewer layers of people you have to be in bed with between you and your Bitcoin, the better. Ideally, nobody And that's the beauty of this asset, is that you can hold it and take custody, and you don't have to rely on anybody else. And I mean, some companies may be on the up and up and everything's cool and everything's great, but as we've seen, there are plenty of companies and people trying to sell you things and products and tangential things to Bitcoin, and also things that are masquerading as good as Bitcoin, and they're just going down left and right. They're being taken out, because of frauds and Ponzi's. And I was just explaining this to my father-in-law. He's like, "Oh, how's Bitcoin?" And I was like, "Bitcoin's great. It's never been better." He's like, "Well, what about the Sam Bankman-Fried stuff?" And it's like, yeah, what about Bernie Madoff? Like, Bernie Madoff running a Ponzi scheme didn't have anything to say about the underlying asset which he was dealing with, which was the U.S. dollar. Which, by the way, I would consider a shitcoin, but that's a whole separate story. But it doesn't reflect on Bitcoin. And so I think for me, as an investor and as someone who wants a better money, wants a money that is not programmed to debase, and wants to be able to be self-sovereign and take possession of it myself, and not have it be censored by anyone. That's why I'm a Bitcoiner. It's objectively a better money.
100%. So, Terrence, and we're getting close to the top of the hour. $1 billion is a lot of money. Specifically, $1.1 billion is a lot of money. If the New York Attorney General's office wins this case, is Gemini on the hook? Is Barry Silbert on the hook?
So Barry Silbert is named as a defendant, as is Gemini, Genesis, and Digital Currency Group, and this guy Michael Moro, or Soichiro Moro, who we need to learn more about. I don't know too much about him. So if you guys do know about him, those of you watching, please tag me on Twitter or slide into my DMs. I'd love to learn your take. But yeah, potentially Barry, because he's named, can be personally liable. That's why he's named. And the New York Attorney General thinks they have enough to survive a motion to dismiss, to survive summary judgment against the New York AG. So that's why you would file these lawsuits. Regulators tend to only file lawsuits when they think they can win. They're actually too conservative usually. And the former FBI director, James Comey, when he was a U.S. Attorney General or Assistant Attorney General, whatever, he basically chastised U.S. Attorney Generals around the world, around the country, saying, you guys are way too conservative because your win rate is like 97%. You win all the time. You need to stick your neck out and prosecute people, alleged criminals, knowing that you might lose. You're kind of waiting for all the evidence until it's super obvious before you do something that's not protecting people.
Is Gemini at risk? Gemini, the exchange, with this type of law, or
They're,
with this
they're at
amount of
some
money on
risk
the line?
because, like, if you look at Kraken, right, they're not being currently not yet sued or not sued. They may be, who knows? And I think people who are smart will gravitate towards Bitcoin and Bitcoin only platforms, such as Swan, where I work, but also other Bitcoin only platforms. So there's a golden opportunity, I think, for these Bitcoin only platforms to thrive while crypto undergoes a massive correction and these casinos get cut down to size, at least, if not disappear.
Gotcha. Okay, so we are getting into the top of the hour. I want to take advantage of this time to really talk about Swan Private, and really glad that I have you and Alex here to do just that. So, Terrence, real quick, what is Swan Private for anybody tuning in to the live stream?
Sure. It's the best way for you to own and get educated on Bitcoin and take self-custody, because we provide unparalleled customer service, value, and expertise. Great access to experts, also a community. You can go to Swan Salons in Miami with you and Alex. You can come to Swan Salons in LA with Corey, Guy, myself, others. And we have an incredible in-person community of Swan clients who bond with each other, get to know the Swan staff, get to see and talk to and hang out with speakers, whether it's Jimmy Song. One of our clients hung out with him for basically 20 minutes after one Swan Salon in Los Angeles, one-on-one, and took pictures and all that stuff. So it's a golden opportunity to just go deeper in the Bitcoin community. Bitcoiners are special. We're very early. There's 8 billion people who don't get it, and Swan Private can be your partner in your Bitcoin journey, including in person.
Alex, do you want to add to that?
Absolutely. And like, how long do you want me to go for? There's a lot to say.
As much as your heart
There's a lot
desires.
to say here, and I agree with everything that Terrence just said. And kind of the one of the ways that I frame it when I'm talking to a Swan Private client is when they're wanting to know, well, what's the difference between Swan and everything else out there? And to me, one of the biggest differences is the people. Like, we're very focused on education. We're very focused on in-person contact. Swan Private in particular, you get a dedicated Swan Private representative working with you. Like, why does this matter? Well, it's like you can go to an exchange, but if something goes weird, sideways, whatever with your account, I call that get ready to send an email and pray method, because that's all you got. With Swan Private, you have a dedicated person. Not only that, look, I'm a managing director with Swan Private. Terrence is a managing director with Global Wealth. He basically helps build and vet and do the legal stuff with all the Swan Private stuff that's coming down the pipe. There's 3 MDs with Swan Private. We have a huge team of people backing us up that are dedicated to helping our Swan Private customers, and you get direct access to us. A lot of my clients can they know how to reach me very quickly. They get priority access, priority queues. Like, if there's a problem that they're experiencing, they get bumped right to the front of the line. You get unlimited access to our team, deep bench of experts. Why does this matter? Well, we have found that, clients that are spending more than just a couple $1,000s, like they're putting serious money into Bitcoin, they are willing to pay a little bit more in terms of fees or whatever the case may be to get access to somebody they can talk to when they need them. If there's ever an urgent situation, we're right there. And they like that. Also, this deep bench of experts, regardless of what they're interested in learning. Look, the fact is, our clients are extremely busy people. Many of them are business owners or they're professionals. They have a very, very busy life and a very busy schedule. They do not have time to be dedicating thousands of hours to doing all the heavy lifting to understand what Bitcoin is. And so our team of experts can talk to them about multi-sig, entry strategies, inheritance planning, hardware wallets, custody, nodes, lightning, whatever. I promise you, someone on our team has the expertise to answer any question that they've got. So we basically take that gigantic time loop out and we're like, these are the things you might want to consider. Those are the landmines to avoid. Don't step on that. Right. But on top of that, there's other benefits. We can do OTC, desk, concierge execution, which is a huge deal. If a client is placing orders for, let's call it $500,000 and up, you want to be careful about how you do that. Otherwise, you're going to be eating spreads. And at the end of the day, you're going to get less Bitcoin. So we can help with that too. We have tools, we have tactics, we have methods of knowing if I place X amount of dollars on any exchange, I have tools that I can use to look up, well, how's that going to impact the spread? And we can help people with all those kinds of things. So in addition to everything Terrence mentioned, also you get access to our research team. In my opinion, these are some of the smartest people in the entire sector, the entire industry. We've got Hoffa, we've got the name was escaping me, Sam, and a couple of other individuals that are incredibly intelligent. The Swan Private Insights newsletter, 45 to 75 pages of data-dense Bitcoin market specific research. In my personal opinion, you could easily pay $1,000 a month just for access to what's in that newsletter, not including all of the other benefits you get as a Swan Private client. And on top of that, you get first look at all of the private wealth products that are coming out for our Swan Private clients. Things like Account Guard, things like collateralized Bitcoin lending, things like collaborative multi-sig, inheritance planning, which is a huge deal. I literally just got off the phone with a guy who's setting up his family trust structures, and they're buying Bitcoin and in large quantities. So and I hear this kind of conversation all the time from clients. They're like, okay, look, I'm a Bitcoiner. I get it. I'm buying Bitcoin seriously, but my wife and my kids don't understand it. And frankly, they don't care. So what do we do? Like when I'm gone, what do they do? These are very important questions that need good answers. And this is what Swan Private is here to help people do.
100%. It's a white glove service. It's not just a support email and hope to God they get back to you, right? There's an actual human being that you can call and you can ask them any type of Bitcoin related question, whether it's about custody, whether it's about purchases. So Terrence and Alex, thank you guys so much for coming on the breaking news live stream today. I appreciate both of you.
Welcome.
All right, guys, that was a stream. I'm here left with Hunter. Hunter is the star of some of the Swan originals we've been dropping on the Swan channel. Hunter, thank you so much for joining us today as well.
Happy to be a part of it. Thanks, Nico.
Hope to see some more of those very, very soon. All right, guys, that was our stream. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you guys want to find out more about Swan Private, check out the link down below in the video description. If you guys want to check out the Swan originals, check out the Swan YouTube channel. In fact, don't only just check out the Swan YouTube channel, check out the Swan YouTube channel, the Rumble, the Twitter. We're absolutely everywhere. And of course, get your tickets for Pacific Bitcoin 2024. I know it's a year away, but this is the best time to get the best prices. I made it super easy for you guys. You could scan the QR code on your screen. It'll take you directly to the Pacific Bitcoin website where you can get yourself some tickets. You could also check the video, the link in the video description. It'll take you to the website as well. Guys, like I said, smash the like button. Consider subscribing if you feel like we provided you value, and we'll see you on the next one. Peace out, everybody.